Hey guys, we're at the top of the hour and we always start on time. I'm ready to get started and I hope you're ready to get started too. I'm Mark Carrier and I want to welcome you to the webinar training today. Now, we're going to be on for, say, 40 minutes or so. And before this webinar ends, I'm going to reveal to you the 7 pillars for creating amazing team leaders who effectively coach, nurture, and lead winning teams. Does that sound good to you? I bet you'd love that, right? My goal in the next 40 minutes or so is at the end of this training, you're going to learn exactly that. And if so, then this training would have been a success. Is that fair enough? You excited? Great. And for attending this training, you'll also receive my scoring model outlining the outlining the key criteria found in amazing team leaders who effectively coach, nurture, and lead winning teams. Now, this scoring model is based on the 67 standard Lominger competencies of great leaders, which I've deconstructed and selected 43 criteria relating specifically to amazing team leaders to save you time. And I've added a scoring element for each criteria to make it easier for you to identify those competencies team leaders excel in and other competencies you can both work on to improve together. And I've included also a shortened list of the top 10 traits and characteristics you can use when considering recruiting a new team leader externally or if you're promoting from within. You'll find that really useful too, right? Okay, so hey guys, if you got your mobile phone out or cell phone, or if you've got Skype or Facebook on, please close them down because I need your attention because we'll be covering a lot today. But if you're not paying attention, none of this will help you at all. So you need to make sure you're paying attention, okay? Great. Now, just to tell you a little bit about myself, I've spent the last 31 years honing my call center experience in the trenches, running marketing departments, consulting with small to large businesses, coaching and mentoring their call center leaders, team managers, and call center managers, as well as speaking at international conferences. And having owned a call center myself and years running call centers around the world that have won industry awards for Call Center of the Year and coaching staff who have won Call Center Manager and Telemarketer of the Year awards, I'm well aware of the difficulties faced in creating amazing team leaders. And if you're here, I bet you're finding creating amazing team leaders a bit of a challenge. Is that right? Yeah, I bet, eh? Now, when it comes to finding and creating amazing team leaders, I got to tell you, I've done a lot of things right, and believe me, I've done a lot of things wrong. And after doing this over the years, I figured out that getting call centers to consistently reach their monthly targets doesn't need to be a frustrating or disappointing experience. And the key to consistent team performance are effective team leaders with the necessary leadership and coaching skills to quickly reduce the time it takes a team member to be productive. And amazing team leaders are created, not born. But you still need the right characteristics and traits to begin with. And to create truly amazing team leaders, you need an effective training process so they clearly understand their role and the practical skills they need to lead their teams to consistently achieve their monthly targets and KPIs. And what I mean by an effective training process is ensuring team leaders have a clear understanding of their role and the practical skills necessary to manage their time to get all tasks completed, monitor and score team members' calls, provide positive feedback where needed, and effectively provide on-the-job coaching to increase staff productivity and create and sustain a nurturing environment that is fun and supportive. And here's the payoff. According to the leadership research conducted by Dr. Jack Zinger and Dr. Joe Folkman, you've heard of these thought leaders, have you? Quickly, for those who haven't, in 2003, Dr. Zinger and Folkman created Zinger Folkman, which grew out of their groundbreaking research behind their best-selling book, The Extraordinary Leader, Turning Good Managers into Great Leaders. Today, Zenger Folkman is at the forefront of leadership training programs for some of the world's biggest companies, including General Mills, AT&T, and DirecTV, helping their leaders and organizations become extraordinary. Over the course of their years of research, some of the many things they found and share in their How Developing a Culture Pays Off white paper is employees would like to receive a good deal more coaching from their boss than they currently receive. And while they like being told pleasant and positive things, they also recognize that even greater value comes from periodically receiving corrective feedback regarding how they are accomplishing their work or about things that they could be doing to make an even bigger contribution. And what are really important are the 5 outcomes in the relationship of coaching behaviors to important business outcomes. They found the first being improved productivity, where they found coaching has a great impact on employee productivity or their willingness to go the extra mile. In their research, employees were asked the question, are you willing to go the extra mile? And as you can see here, the least effective coaches have at least or less than 15% of their direct reports responding positively to this question, while the most effective coaches have 3 times as many people responding positively. I mean, that's huge, isn't it? The second outcome is greater employee engagement. When employees who are coached regularly, they feel a greater level of engagement and commitment. As you see in the graph, employee commitment plotted against coaching effectiveness shows quite a steep rise in the level of employee commitment as effective coaching increases. Just look at the commitment level for employees when coaching effectiveness hits the top 3 deciles. I mean, that is an amazing level of employee commitment, isn't it? I mean, just imagine how much more productive your operators would be if they reached this level of commitment. That would be awesome, wouldn't it? The third outcome is improved retention. In this graph, you can see they found that more than 60% of employees reporting to a manager who is not a good coach are thinking about quitting versus 22% reporting to the best coaches. I mean, isn't that amazing? Probably not that surprising for some of us, but just think about all the time, energy, and money you spend replacing operators with new staff who take weeks or even months to become productive. It makes you realize how important effective coaching is, doesn't it? Now, the fourth outcome is employee development. And when asked, do you receive the needed coaching and feedback about your performance? This graph shows the answers. I mean, the scores from this question are plotted against, I'm given a real opportunity to improve my skills in the company. And as they point out in their paper, employee development is clearly related to increased retention, employee commitment, and other important variables. Besides that, I mean, developing employees is simply the right thing to do. After all, employees who are constantly developing are constantly adding new ways to increase the bottom line of the organization. I mean, that makes sense, right? And the last outcome is that coaching impacts the overall opinions employees have about their boss. This graph plots the question, I received the needed coaching against overall I feel my immediate supervisor is doing a good job. And as the graph shows, it's clear that the degree to which a boss takes time to coach employees makes a big difference in how they feel about them and whether they think that they're doing a good job. And as they point out in their paper, the opinion that employees have about their boss takes on added importance, and the way to improve that perception is largely through good coaching. Clearly, the data shown here supports this conclusion, and it's like the old saying, you don't quit your job, you quit your boss, right? Now, I discovered all this the hard way, and you get to cheat and get the easy way. Now, wouldn't that be awesome? Here's the hard way I've done it. Firstly, by promoting a really good operator to become a team leader. That's usually the first option I look for, but often I've found that although they are great on the phone, not all of them can really explain or show others what they do that makes them really good operators. And sometimes it's because they just don't have the right traits or characteristics. But the main reason they failed was because they had little to no training or ongoing support from their manager. And, when that happened most times is, you lose a really good team member because once somebody fails as a team leader, it's almost impossible to get them to go back to just being an operator, right? So, when I was recruiting somebody from outside the company, it was hit and miss because, it takes time to learn the product and processes or systems and adapt to the culture. And even though they aced the interview process, after a few weeks, you could see that they had little to no training or ongoing support in their last job or positions. And worst of all, they often brought bad habits with them that you had to deal with after they started. Want the easy way to create amazing team leaders, whether you're promoting somebody from within or outside? I mean, wouldn't it be great if you had a proven, practical, easy to implement team leader training process developed in the trenches that delivers the key foundations for new and existing team leaders so they can consistently reach or even exceed their team's monthly goals? How much different would things be if you had team leaders like that? A whole lot different than things are now, I bet. I mean, for a start, you'd have a lot less stress and frustration, wouldn't you? Just imagine how much easier your life would be if you could create amazing team leaders whose teams hit their monthly targets and KPIs every month. I mean, that would be awesome, wouldn't it? Now, over the last 31 years, owning, managing, and consulting on call centers here and around the world, I've discovered the 7 pillars for developing a world-class training program for creating amazing team leaders. The first pillar is getting the right person in the right seat at the right time. That's the number one priority. And thankfully, successful team leaders share common traits, characteristics, and practices, so it's easy to identify these special people. And you'll find my team leader scoring model that you'll be getting at the end of the training really, really useful for this. The next pillar is effective time management. That's making sure your team leaders are spending the individual time they need with their team members, especially underperformers. Most team leaders haven't a clue on how to effectively manage their time, so it's critical you provide the structure and accountability to ensure they are using their time most effectively. Pillar 3 is having a coachable call structure, which is an easy to understand call structure with the right steps and sequence your operators can follow and that team leaders can use to coach them with. The next pillar is call monitoring and calibrated scoring of team members' calls. Uh, Pillar 5 is effectively providing corrective and nurturing feedback to identify both the positive aspects of calls to praise and the deficiencies that team leaders and team members can work on together in coaching sessions. The next pillar is conducting skills audits to break down each of the team members' call skills, administration tasks, and product knowledge to identify which areas a team leader needs to focus on with each of their team members to get the most productivity from them. And pillar 7 is developing coaching plans to keep team leaders focused on covering the areas each of their team members need improvement on with a simple coaching plan that outlines which areas need work, what coaching is required, who delivers it, and when it's delivered. Over the years, I've come to understand that, all team leaders are not the same, and there are common traits, characteristics, and practices that set successful team leaders apart. The key to selecting the right team leader for your call center is understanding which of these traits, characteristics, and practices, successful team leaders have in common. So you can look for these in prospective candidates when recruiting from outside or promoting from within. Obviously, you want the right person from the start, even if you need to help them learn some of the skills, because it's always easier and quicker coaching somebody who has the right basic characteristics to begin with, right? Now, here are 30 of the most common traits and characteristics and practices successful team leaders display. And, many you'll recognize and some you may not have thought of. I won't go through all of them now for time's sake. And I hear some of you saying, thank God for that. Just remember, at the end of the webinar, I'll be giving you my amazing team leader scoring model that you can use, to rate each of your current team leaders. And so you're not going to get this anywhere else, okay? As I said, this will give you a really good insight into where your current team leaders fit and areas you may need to coach them. And if you're recruiting team leaders in the future, it's a terrific guide to help you get a clear idea of the sort of person you want to invite to lead one of your teams. Isn't that great? I bet you find this really useful, right? Now, the number one reason most team leaders give for not providing on the job training or coaching is that they just don't have the time with all the different admin, HR, and supervisional tasks that they have to do every day. And, some have a point when you look at all the things they do each day and every week. Now, if this is the case in your center, you should have a look at which tasks can be handled by an administrator or somebody in HR rather than a team leader. I mean, after all, their primary focus should be on reaching their team's goals each week, right? So you need to make sure they have the time and energy to provide really effective coaching. If, on the other hand, your team leaders aren't overburdened with too many tasks to deal with, then you're really dealing with an excuse, and that's an easy fix. When you drill down with these team leaders, their problem with coaching usually comes back to a couple simple challenges they face. Firstly, they don't really know what problems their team members are having on their calls with their or with their process because they don't spend enough time listening to team members' calls. So how can they understand what areas their team member needs coaching with? Now, when you look at a list of typical tasks team leaders are faced with each day and week, their time and energy levels are at a premium. So it's critical you ensure they effectively manage their time, making sure they prioritize time for call monitoring and providing corrective feedback and on-the-job coaching to more quickly turn underperformers into consistently productive team members. And to make sure they're scheduling their time effectively, have them complete a weekly schedule like this for the coming week. Give you a copy and have them pin it somewhere on their workspace. Be sure, to review the schedule to make sure they're focused on the coaching tasks you want and make any necessary amendments if needed. And then their no time excuse goes away. You also want to keep them accountable, so periodically check in throughout the week to make sure they're doing their coaching tasks when scheduled. When you add all these essential elements together, your team leaders will now have the time to help their team members perform better because team members are finally getting the coaching they need. You guys getting this? It makes sense, doesn't it? Team leaders need an easy to understand call structure they can follow for every call, and I'm not just talking about a script or call guide. In fact, before you create any call guide or script, you should create a coachable call structure first and follow its structure when creating your call guide. What I'm talking about is a simple call structure that sets out all the key steps in the proper sequence operators should follow to achieve the positive call outcome you want. Be that, handling a customer service call, booking appointments, or making sales. And regardless of whether you've recruited a new team leader from outside or promoted somebody from within, they need a simple and easy to understand call structure they can coach so everybody is on the same page. This is especially true when recruiting from outside so they can quickly learn and coach your particular call structure. But often, equally true when promoting from within because although those you promoted may have been a really good operator themselves, many don't really know what they did that made them good operators or, find it easy to explain how they were successful. It just came naturally. That's so true in a lot of cases, isn't it? Here's an example of a coachable sales call structure I created excuse me, for one of my clients who's a major player in the travel industry selling cruises, escorted tours, and other travel related products. And they turn over about 150, 200 million in phone sales annually. They've been using this call structure for years, and their team leaders religiously and continuously coach this to every new hire and underperformer. And it's based on an old face-to-face sales training technique called the buying line, which I deconstructed, rebuilt, and named the calling line. A pretty imaginative name, isn't it? Seriously, though, it's the best call structure I've found and can be modified or customized for any call, whether it be an inbound or outbound sales call or with a few tweaks, customer service calls too. It's an awesome tool. I've coached to my own team members, team leaders, and my clients for years. This call structure really crystallizes the steps when making a call, and when done right, is easy to learn and really easy to coach. Just imagine how much more quickly you'd improve your overall call center's performance if you had a call structure your team leaders could use to coach and all their team members, were to follow. Once you've created a coachable call structure staff can follow for each call, it's much easier for team leaders to know what to look for, how to score each section of a call, and identify positive and corrective feedback they need to share about the calls they listen to. Now, what you need to do to make this happen is create a call scoring and feedback tool like the one I'm showing you here. I mean, I use this tool to help people running call centers customize their own in my 7 Pillars Mastermind group. And remember, when you create this tool, make sure it identifies all the soft and hard skills team members need to cover as outlined in your call structure, and an overall call score that indicates whether the call was awesome, adequate, or if training is urgently required. You want to make sure your team leaders score each area of the call structures to easily identify what was great about the call and what areas they need to coach their team member on. And when you create the scoring and feedback tool, you need to be sure to give score values for each area. So team leaders only need to tick the score in each area of the form, which then automatically totals the result for the whole call. And when you roll this out to your team leaders, be sure to have everyone in the same room listening and scoring the same call independently from each other, okay? And after all your team leaders have scored the call, go through each section of the call and discuss each team leader's score. If you do this exercise, this will deliver clarity and alignment on appropriate scoring for each section, so everybody is on the same page, and there aren't, big score variances for any section between team leaders. This also makes sure team leaders understand what you think is appropriate scoring and consistency in scoring, okay? Especially when team members are moved to different teams. Now, prior to giving nurturing feedback on a call, it's important that team leaders and members listen to the call together. Okay, and before listening to the call, just have your team leaders make sure they give the team member a blank score sheet for them to score the call themselves. By having them score the call themselves, they'll see where they could have done better, and if they score for any section that's really different to the team leader score, they can discuss those differences with the team leader, easily pointing out why they scored that section as they did. Now, can you see how awesome a tool like this would be for your team leaders to use to zero in on the areas team members need to be praised for and those areas they need to be coached on? I bet they'd love to be trained on how to use this tool, particularly with those underperformers on their team, wouldn't they? And it's really easy for you to check up on your team leaders to make sure they've been listening and scoring calls and providing corrective feedback. All you do is have them give you a copy of each form after every feedback session they have with their team members. You guys getting this? It makes sense, right? Pillar 6 is teaching your team leaders how to regularly conduct a team member skills audit of each of their team members, especially when they have chronic underperformers or when new team members, join the team. To get started, simply create a skills audit form like this one that I use in my 7 Pillars Mastermind group and outline all the call sections of your coachable call structure, as well as other areas like product knowledge, systems knowledge, and admin. Have team leaders add notes to each area team members need help in so they can remember what needs to be done specifically. So, this is why I use an Excel spreadsheet, and you can just put that note right there. Just click on that and it comes up. And have team leaders conduct quarterly audits to make sure they capture all the new hires since the last audit. After they've completed the audit, sit down with them and discuss the areas team members need coaching or training in and decide how, best to deliver any training or coaching. And if many team members need help in any specific area, it may be better to have a group training session on that area. that's where, keeping notes on each audit section comes in handy. And, wouldn't it be wonderful for you to know, and more importantly, your team leader to have a clear understanding of all the coaching and training needs for each of your team members? I bet you'd love knowing your team leaders on top of that, and, on top of what they need to work on with their team. I mean, wouldn't you? Especially when you can regularly check on their progress and hold them accountable for it. I bet you'd love that too, wouldn't you? Pillar 7 is team coaching plans to keep team leaders focused on covering the areas each of their team members need improvement on. Again, simply create a plan like this one that we work with in my 7 Pillars Mastermind that outlines which areas need work and what coaching is required and when it will be delivered and who delivers it. This pulls everything together for team leaders into a coaching roadmap they can follow to focus on the specific areas of improvement needed for each of their team members. Of course, some team members are really, really good operators who won't need a lot of coaching, but they can still improve in some areas, can't they? So, you'd be amazed at how many really good operators want their team leader to score some of their calls and work with them because they're feeling like they may be falling off a little bit. So coaching plans don't only need to be put together for underperforming team members to get their performance to at least minimal acceptable levels. Once everyone once everyone on the team has reached that minimal performance level, you can start it again and with the lower achievers and drive them up again even further. Now, I know what I'm showing you may seem like a lot of work at first, but believe me, once your team leaders get used to the process, it becomes really easy to do, and your team members will appreciate all the attention and help they get, won't they? Now, I'm sure everyone's heard about the old 80-20 rule, where 80% of your production comes from only 20% of your staff, right? Well, let me ask you a question. What if by following these 7 pillars, you could raise that 20% of top performers by just another 5%? What would that do for consistently reaching your monthly targets? And what if only after a few months you raise the number of productive operators to 30%? Think about what that would mean for you. And if after only 6 months you were getting 40% of your operators to be productive, how much more revenue and profit would you be delivering each month? A lot more than you're doing now, right? How would that feel? Pretty amazing, right? With a higher percentage of staff being more productive, you'd easily hit your KPIs and wouldn't have to replace as many operators with new hires, and all those savings go straight to the bottom line. How good would that be? One business I've been helping for years, I mentioned earlier, is Ice Vacations. As I said, they're the #1 seller of cruise holidays in Australia, and last year they sold over $150 million of cruise vacations. Over the years that we've been working together, I've developed their induction training program for inbound and outbound operators and mentored their call center managers and team leaders in their 3 call centers. And this all started a few years ago when their CEO, Kevin Sharp, was telling me how disappointed he was that his call centers weren't hitting their targets every month. Kevin was really frustrated because every month they were falling behind on their budget, and he felt he had to add more operators just to catch up. But, all this was doing was just adding more staff and overhead costs without increasing profitability. So, Kevin told me his biggest problem was team leaders were acting as team servants, not leaders, because they just didn't have the skills needed to do the job. And his call center managers didn't have a comprehensive training process to develop them. And what happened most times was, like it did to me, they promoted really good operators as team leaders, but usually had to replace them after a few months and lost a really good operator as well. So, what Kevin wanted was a solid program his call center managers could follow to develop team leaders with the skills they needed to be confident about leading their teams to hit their targets every month. I bet this sounds pretty familiar, right? And I bet you can relate to Kevin's disappointment and frustration, can't you? So we customized a team leader training program Kevin's call center managers could implement to develop the skills their team leaders needed following the seven pillars I've been showing you today, including, the 43 traits, characteristics, and practices of amazing team leaders, so they could, use that to score team leader candidates to make sure they were selecting the best people for the job. And we developed a weekly template for team leaders to use to make sure that all the key areas like coaching and training and providing corrective feedback were covered each week. We also created a coachable call structure team leaders could easily coach to make sure everyone was following a proven system for handling their calls. And we developed an easy to use scoring and feedback tool like I just showed you to make sure call scoring was consistent between team leaders and they could easily score calls and provide constructive feedback to team members. And we also created a customized skills audit template for his team leaders to use to identify skill gaps in each of their team members so they could develop coaching or training plans with the call center managers to close these gaps. And, here's what Kevin has to say about how his call centers are operating since they've been following the 7 pillars for creating amazing team leaders. Pretty cool, isn't it? Personally, it was really satisfying being involved with this process with them, and I really enjoy chatting with his team leaders when we catch up and, hearing all about how they feel about growing people on their teams. Now, some of you are probably thinking, yeah, well, that's fine if you have a large company with lots of team leaders to work with, but we're only a small operation that's a little too much for us, a little too much work for us. Well, if that's what some of you are saying, let me tell you, it doesn't matter how many team leaders you have or how many people are in a team. What matters is how productive your team members are each and every week. Productivity and profit they don't care about how big you are. They only care that you are more productive and making more profit. And if your call center team isn't productive, they won't be profitable, regardless how big or small your team is. As long as you have one team being led by a team leader, that leader needs to understand their role and have the skills needed to get the best out of their team. Now, all the stuff we've covered is exciting, right? Wouldn't you agree it's been time well spent? Just write something in the chat box to give me some feedback, would you? I'll just wait for you guys to do that a bit and maybe grab a little glass of water while we're waiting. Okay, let's see what some of you had to say. Amanda wrote, thanks so much. I've learned so much. My head is spinning. Well, glad to hear that, Amanda. Matthew says, really love the call scoring model. I'm going to put that together. That's a great idea. It's very, very critical. And Anna wrote, wow, I'm a new call center manager and wish I had all this help when I was a team leader. Yeah, I bet you do. Listen, thank you all for those comments. I really appreciate it. Of course, we can't cover everything in a 40-minute webinar, and we probably couldn't cover it all even if we had the whole day. And, as promised, in a few minutes, we're going to, I'm going to send you your amazing team leader scoring model. But before we do that, let me ask you a question. How many of you guys feel a little like this right now? I think Amanda does. I know I talk really fast, and I guess the last 40 minutes has been fun, but, some of you probably feel a little like this, am I right? Okay, and I totally get that. Let me ask you, how would you like it if I could actually help you implement this? Just use the chat box again and let me know if you'd like help with this, okay? I'll just wait a few seconds and get a little more water. Okay, let's see what some of you had to say. Oh, that would be awesome. You can do that. Sounds great. How would that work? Well, it looks like a lot of you want information, and I've got something that can help you, okay? So what I wanted to do because of that is tell you about the 7 Pillars exclusive mastermind group I've created to help people create their own customized training structure and process for creating amazing team leaders who coach, nurture, and lead winning teams without all the hassles of doing it on your own. Now, look, I know it's always awkward, like you're on this webinar, and I do have something to sell, and if you guys are okay with that, I would love to share it with you. If not, though, I won't, but if you want me to share it with you, just let me know, And I'll just wait a few seconds to see if anybody does. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Peter, and you too, Amanda. I'm not surprised. Well, looks like many of you do, and that's great. Okay, let me show you what we've put together for you with the Seven Pillars exclusive mastermind. Okay, I run a exclusive mastermind for small groups of people responsible for running call centers to help them develop their own team leader training program following the seven pillars with all the resources I've shown you today that you can customize and easily roll out with all your team leaders, just like I did with Ice Vacations. This mastermind delivers the key training foundations and tools new and existing team leaders need to acquire the skills to lead their teams to consistently reach or even exceed their monthly goals. And it comes in two parts. The first thing you're going to get are all these easy to use templates, worksheets, and tools that you can easily customize and use immediately, including the role and responsibilities allocation matrix, which is a bonus training we didn't have time to cover today, that clearly identifies all the roles and responsibilities of a team leader and their boss to make sure everyone understands their role and their level of authority. There's also the Team Leader Time Management Scheduler tool to make sure all the critical tasks like on-the-job coaching of team members is done every week, so there are no excuses for critical tasks being missed. Coachable call structure that sets out all the steps in the proper sequence of your call guide. That is easy for team leaders to coach and team members to follow to make sure everyone is handling their calls most effectively. We'll work on that together and customize that for you during the masterminds. And call scoring and feedback tool we'll customize for team leaders to use to score their team's calls to identify what areas of the call guide they need help with and get the corrective feedback they need for continuous improvement. And also, templates for you to conduct skill audits for your team leaders and for your team leaders to regularly conduct skill audits on their team members, and the team leader and team member coaching plan forms that we'll customize together. And to help you customize all these resources and guide you through the whole process, you'll also get 7 mentoring sessions with me to help you customize all the resources and develop your own specific training process for team leaders. So, there won't be any theory or fluff, and we'll be getting stuck straight into it. And these sessions will be held online and only be for an hour a week over 7 weeks. So you don't have to spend time away from the call center, and to give you it also gives you the time to implement each of the 7 pillars with your team leaders. This allows you to create and introduce your training program immediately with access to a mentor who speaks your language, understands your needs firsthand, and will keep you on track and accountable. Now, I could have decided, excuse me, to conduct 2-day live workshops, Jan, with 30 plus people. But, what typically happens with most people who attend workshops? Sure, often they get lots of useful information and ideas they can implement and have fun engaging with other people. However, the problem with workshops like this is that retention levels of attendees diminishes really quickly over a few weeks, and there is really no personal help or accountability for implementing anything learned. Just way too many people to work with, and you don't get the personal attention you need. Not to mention how many of us can really afford to spend a day or two away from their call center, right? That's why I decided to restrict mentoring sessions to a small group of only 10 to 12 people max for an hour a week over 7 weeks. This way you aren't away for extended periods, and I can give you more personal guidance and keep you on track and accountable. And with a small group, I can keep the cost down to make it more doable for you. I'm thinking in terms of getting the best outcomes, this makes the most sense, doesn't it? So you get all the easy to use resource templates and tools I showed you earlier, plus the amazing team leader scoring model that you can customize for any call center operation, and the role and responsibilities allocation matrix, the team leader time management scheduler tool, the coachable call structure format, call scoring and feedback tool, templates for you to conduct skills audits on your team leaders and for your team leaders to conduct those on their team members, and coaching plans for both team leader and team members that we'll customize together, and 7 weekly 1 hour mentoring sessions with me to help you develop your own team leader training process, covering each of the 7 pillars I shared with you today to create amazing team leaders. So who does this work for? Basically, any business to consumer or business to business companies involved in sales or customer contact, obviously travel agencies and call center bureaus, charitable fundraising organizations, credit unions, banks, and financial companies. Like I said, basically any business with team leaders that serve customers, book appointments, or make sales. I had 2 choices when I put this package together. The first choice was that I could make it really cheap for, by creating an online course and, only charging like, I don't know, $4.99, and we'd sell lots of people and everyone would have access to it. And that was one option. But the problem with that option is that I can't put in the time and the resources to really serve you. So, instead of selling thousands of people for $4.99, what I decided to do was to help you by giving you more personal attention. And I decided to charge more to justify spending more time and effort with you. And I'm guessing, for most of you, you'd probably want a little more effort from me, right? So that's why I decided to charge more for what I'm selling, but not the full 4,000. Does that make sense? And just to recap what you get, you get all these easy to use resort templates and tools I showed you that, you can customize for any call center operation. And, that's the role and responsibilities allocation matrix, the team leader time management scheduler tool, the coachable call structure format, call scoring and feedback tool, and those, skill audits formats for team leaders and also for the team leaders to use for their team members, and 7 weekly 1 hour mentoring sessions with me to help you develop your own team leader training process. So look, guys, I'm not going to charge you, I'm not going to charge you 4,000 today. I could, but I'm not going to. But I want to ask you something. If all this mastermind did was make your lower performing operators more profitable, would it be worth 4,000? Yeah, I thought so. And if all this mastermind did was reduce the time it took you to increase your team's performance, would it be worth 4,000? Yeah, I think so too. And if all this mastermind did was give you another 5 to 10 top operators, would it be worth 4,000? Yeah. I don't know about you, but I would trade 4,000 to get me another 5 to 10 top operators without having to spend months going through the revolving door of hiring, training, and firing for months. I'd do that all day long. Does that make sense? But don't worry, I'm not going to price it at 4,000. What I'm going to do is offer a best value price for those who take some action today. Usually, the cost for my exclusive mastermind is $2,897, but today I'm going to do it for only one payment of $2,450, which is the best value I can offer, and I'm not going to ask you to pay me anything today. The reason for that is I restrict this mastermind to a maximum of 12 people to make sure I don't overload myself with all the work I need to do for you. And I also want to make sure that those I approve for this mastermind have a clear idea of what they will be required to do to get the most out of this group. That's why I'm asking people to apply to join this mastermind to make sure we have the right people in the group. And just so we're clear, the 7 Pillars Mastermind is only for people responsible for call centers that are willing to commit to an hour a week for 7 weeks. That's all. Be coachable, push yourself to get things done, and have fun. If you can do these 4 things, then, this may be a perfect fit for you. So grab this link and type it into your browser and head over to apply to join this exclusive mastermind group. I'm only going to be taking applications for the next 7 days, and after that, applications will be closed. So, and once I have your application, we'll schedule a quick chat, answer any questions you may have, and make sure we're a good fit for each other, okay? So copy the link, put it in your browser, and apply for this mastermind group. And remember, I'm restricting the intake, so if you want in, you better move quickly. Now don't say I didn't warn you, all right? Now, you've got two decisions to make. Choice number one is that you can apply and invest with the best value. You can get started in a few weeks and have this entire team leader training system up and running from the first week, creating amazing team leaders who coach, nurture, and lead successful teams. Or you can finish this webinar right now and go to bed tonight, and tomorrow you'll sit around and do the exact same thing you're doing now. You've got choices in your life too, and you just need to decide which choice is more exciting and what you want in your life. Do you want to go back to exactly what you were doing yesterday? I'm guessing not. Otherwise, why'd you sign up for this free training, right? Okay, so, you're trying to get more out of your call center, and you need to upskill your team leaders. So you show up for this free training. You need help, and you have two choices. You either get help and fix this problem or go back to doing what you've been doing already. I don't know about you, but nothing makes me happier than, that second option. That's why, I really want to help you right now. I want to ask you guys a question. A lot of you have been on trainings like this in the past, right? You get excited and all fired up, and what happens the next day? Probably nothing, because most of you guys go back to your old habits, right? It's sad because, I'm showing you the exact same system Ice Vacations has been using to create their amazing team leaders. And tomorrow you're going to go back to your office and you're not going to do anything. The reason why is because you go back to your old habits, and they're hard to break. You're going to go back to your office tomorrow and you're going to fall into your same old habits with the same team leaders and getting the same old results. The only way you're going to be successful is if you break that old habit right now. And the way you're going to break that habit is by investing in this program. Now, I can come here and help you and give you all the tools you need to break that habit so you can become successful. And if you don't do that, you're going to slide back into your old habit, and everything we've covered in the last 40 minutes or so will be totally useless because of that same old habit. And the only way to break that is to invest now and have the tools to break that habit and be able to take this to the next level. If you're ready to take some massive action in your life and do some cool stuff and change your life for the better, and you want to join us, okay, this is what we're going to do. Apply to join this mastermind to develop your own customized training structure and process for creating amazing team leaders who coach, nurture, and lead winning teams. At the URL on your screen, and, just grab that URL, put it in your browser, and go and apply. And after I've reviewed your application, we can have a quick chat to make sure we're a good fit for each other. And if we both agree, then, we'll get started. Is that fair? And again, just to recap again, you're going to get the 9 easy-to-use resource templates and tools I showed you earlier, plus the amazing team leader scoring model that you can customize for any call center operation, and the role and responsibilities allocation matrix, the team leader time management scheduler tool, the coachable call structure format we'll work on together to develop for your particular needs. The call scoring and feedback tool we'll customize for your team leaders to use to score their team's calls. Those skill audits templates for both team leaders and for the team leaders to use for their team members, and as well as the team leader and team member coaching plan forms that we'll customize together, and 7 weekly 1-hour mentoring sessions with me to help you develop your own team leader training process. And like I said, I want to be sure that those I approve for this exclusive mastermind have a clear idea of what they will be required to do in our mentoring sessions to get the most out of the package. So grab the link on your screen now and head over to apply, and we'll schedule a chat within the next few days to discuss the mastermind and make sure we're a good fit for each other. I couldn't be any fairer than that. And remember, I'm restricting the intake, So if you want in, you better move quickly, and don't say I didn't warn you. Now, I haven't forgot about your amazing team leader scoring model with the 43 key traits and practices of successful team leaders for turning up today, and I'll personally email that to you after we've finished. You're going to love it and find it really useful. But stick around for a quick Q&A session if you have a question or two to ask, and we'll cover those for you, all right? So let me see. Why don't you just put your questions in the excuse me, chat box, and I'll type them in here. Oh, okay. Well, here's one. What's involved in the mentoring sessions? Well, as I said, there's going to be 7 mentoring sessions, and we'll take each pillar of the 7 pillars, and we'll cover that. So, in the very beginning, we'll look at the role and resource allocation matrix. We'll also look at the traits of successful, amazing team leaders. We'll work together and sort that out for you. And then, the next week, we'll just continue on. And each week, we'll look at, the time schedule and working that out for your team. And then we will work at the coachable call structure and follow it all the way through. So we'll do it one step at a time. Okay, and there's going to be other bonus things I'll throw in, tips and training processes that you guys will find really useful too. Next question. How much time? How much time do I have to commit each week? Well, obviously that's up to you, but at a very minimum, there's going to be an hour with me and the others in the mastermind group each week. And after that, though, of course, you're going to have some work to do. You're going to have to customize the forms and the tools that we'll be working with. And then what I would suggest you do is that you want to, once you've got it comfortable and you're comfortable with it later that week, you want to introduce it to your team leaders. So you want to bring them in for a training session, go through the tool, make sure they really understand it and start to apply it. And that way, we want to give them bite-sized pieces, not just you, but them, so they have the time to really get their minds wrapped around it and ingrain it into their processes. Okay, that's really important. If we give them way too much all at the same time, they're just going to be flooded, and same with you. I mean, you're going to get flooded and life's going to get in the way. So if we just do this in bite-sized pieces, in 7 weeks, less than 50 days, you'll have this all sorted. Okay. Next question. Are the mentoring sessions face-to-face? No, as I said earlier, we'll do this online. I like to use Zoom, so excuse me, we'll have a Zoom call every week. I'm going to talk to everybody, find out what's the best time, but I'm probably looking at later in the afternoon or earlier in the evening because, when call times are a little lower, we don't want you away from the call center during peak times. So, we'll discuss that, but, all the sessions are going to be face-to-face, I guess, but online with Zoom, okay? Next question, let me just type that. There we go. When would the mentoring sessions be? Well, I'm thinking it's going to be Tuesdays or Wednesdays. I think those are probably the less busier days. I mean, Monday can be a bear with, just coming back to the work week. Fridays, everybody's, mentally signing off. So Thursdays can be pretty tough if you're, chasing your target for the end of the week. So, Thursday, Fridays, we probably want to leave alone. So I'm thinking Tuesdays, Wednesdays, but, when you apply, we'll have a discussion about that, and I'll get a consensus of what's working for everybody. Next we have, will sessions be recorded and can I get recordings? Absolutely. I'm going to record every session, and what's going to happen is, after every session, I'll send you guys a link so you can download the recording and go over it as many times as you like, okay? Right then, and how easy are the resource templates to customize? Well, as I showed you earlier, I pretty much on purpose did them all in Excel because I figured most everybody knows how to use Excel, and that's the easiest way for people to make changes and on the hop. And, of course, things change down the track. You may want to make changes, with your training schedules for your team leaders or the call guide, scoring guide, and all those sorts of things. So I just thought it'd be easier to do it that way. And how soon after a mentoring session start can team leaders be trained? Well, as I said earlier, what I would do is I would, do it the later that day or the next day or the day after your session is, been completed. Just make sure you're very comfortable with what you've got. Introduce it to them. They may have some feedback, make some changes if you need to, that makes sense, and then roll it out and then hold them accountable for that. All right. Well, thank you for attending today's free training. And as I said, I'll be emailing your amazing team leader scoring model out to you later today for turning up. And I'm sure you find that really, really useful. And I just want to say I really appreciate your time today, and I hope you found this training really useful. And I look forward to catching up with you after you've applied to join my mastermind. So again, thanks again for attending, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye for now.